Mrs. Green Apple and the final track on our track by track listen through to the Antenna album. And I'm already surprised. The minute I queued this up, just suddenly saw it's less than 2.5 minutes. And the reason why this caught me by surprise is because I just did the reaction to BFF. You'd have probably seen that a couple of days ago because I'm spacing these out, but I literally just recorded that before now. And listening to BFF, I was listening to it thinking, this is a beautiful song, but it's kind of like setting you up with a calm, so that the final song can be the big final thing. And in my head, I was thinking either it's going to be some grand ballad or it's going to be some big bombastic final huge ending. But I'm really intrigued. At less than 2.5 minutes, meaning that it's barely half the length of, well, just over half the length of BFF, the song prior, the penultimate track on the album, I should point out. Yeah, we're ending on a really short song. Now, my brain usually says when we, because I just as much as I review the songs, I love to review how they fit into the actual album playlist. I mean, you're going to do a track by track of an album, you might as well. When I think of a short final song on an album, I either think joke song or you're ending on a high-speed punk finish. Like, always fun to put in one of those. But I can't see Mrs. Green Apple doing that. I've been really impressed by songs like Kimasabi and ones like this where they've gone a bit punk, but I can't see them doing that. And the song's called Feeling. So I'm imagining this is going to be a cute little ballad to go on the end of the cute ballad we just had. I'm really intrigued. I love hypothesizing about these things because, of course, the minute I press play, the answers will all be revealed. And I'll never get the opportunity to think about it in this way again. I love that about albums. I don't know about you, but I love that about albums. There's something about that first time you sit down and listen through to an album especially, even more than the first time you hear like the premiere of a song. When you sit down and listen to an album, it's that feeling that it's like a movie. You go on a journey. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. It has its individual scenes that are its songs, and you really get to kind of experience that all for the first time. And as much as you can go back and enjoy it over and over again, not something I would normally do with a movie, I know some people do, but as much as you can go back and enjoy an album over and over again, that first time you hear it is always that bit when you don't know what's going to happen next, and that's always really exciting. But we're about to come to the end of Antenna, so let's do it. This song is it's called Feeling. Let's check it out. Only 2.5 minutes of it. Let's go. 終わったことだから振り返ったりしない綺麗になるにはまだ So we moved up a couple of keys from the last song and a little bit of tempo as well. Similar vibe to BFF but a little bit faster. We've got a rhythm section in here. Love that electric organ in the back. Hopping on the piano. Oh yeah, the rhythm is strong in this one. Is that a harpsichord? Okay. I feel like this is fun for the keyboard player. Yeah, this is very fun. To be funky, you've got to have like those spaces between the notes. You've got to have room for things to breathe. And again, this is like one of those songs when it's got those sharp, bouncy sounds. It's actually, it's got a really good energy, but it's also kind of like a nice chill way to the end of the album, as well as having a good positive upbeat energy. That's a cool little bit of mix in there. I like that. It's a really cool way to end it. Like the voice sounds like it's sort of backed away and now it sounds like it's coming over a radio. But at the same time, you've got that little bell piano sound. you can really, they position it so you can feel the finger presses. It feels like the piano's right by your ear. And having the voice now sounding like it was coming through like a little speaker, whilst this little piano sounds like it's really close to your ear, just makes everything suddenly feel smaller and closer. And that's a really nice way to end the album. You know, it's got an album with all these big dramatic sounds, and then the final few notes of the album, the way you conclude it is by bringing it all down to small scale, bringing it really close, and then over. I like that. I think that's a really cool way of approaching it. Yeah, it's always, again, I think there's an art to album crafting, which is often overlooked, especially these days. And yeah, maybe not everyone listens to things these ways. And I know there's probably a lot of people watching this who only care about the opinion on the song rather than my opinion on how it fits on the album. But I must say, I really appreciate ending an album this way, because this is one of those songs where I would say, in isolation, I really enjoy this song. Actually, I did like this one a lot. In isolation, though, it's not like a standout good song. It's just like, yeah, it's a good song. I enjoy it, but it's not like one that I would come running back to and say, oh, that's a Mrs. Green Apple song I have to check out. However, as a song that ends an album, I feel it's very powerful. I feel it's like it's a really nice way of ending it. Like I said a moment ago, whereas you have the options of these big grand finales or these comical ways you can end an album. You can end an album on a quiet, gentle note, or a big dramatic note, or a fast, subversive note. Sometimes just ending an album with a song like this, which is satisfying and fun, but it's not too big, you know, with all these songs that we have on this album that have like big grand string arrangements. This isn't one of them. You know, there's a lot of sounds going on here, but these are all keyboards and things, very much band sounds, you know, nothing too big, nothing too huge. To me, this kind of suggests that they want to put a fun end on the album, but they're kind of avoiding melodrama just in replacement for just a nice positive final note. And I find that a very interesting way to end an album. It's kind of half, I can't really think off the top of my head of an album that ends with a similar kind of direction. It's quite a fresh way to end an album. So as far as this song's concerned, this to me is 100% all about the keyboards. Don't get me wrong, vocals are really nice. I like there's some like fun things. Like I think it was in the second verse where he flips up the syllables a little bit and goes for like that sort of faster, almost, I think it was a tripleted syllable livery he was going for. I can't roll my tongue enough for it. It's too much coffee. That's my excuse. And you know, there's like that 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 3 kind of style syllable delivery he does there, and there's some like fun that he's having, and there's some cool in the bass as well. I enjoyed the bass, the rhythm section. This is really nice, but really this one was all about the keyboards. There's so many layers of things going on. We had like the electric kind of gospel style organ in the background, like almost like a Hammond organ in the background at some points. We had harpsichord. We had some beautiful piano runs. We even had some little piano taps again, which is actually that's kind of a very, one of the things that sometimes people miss is if you want to do something which is really rhythmic, sometimes the best way to do that is actually have like a very something solidly timekeeping, but in a kind of a sparse way, so that everything else can work around that. And then you've kind of got you've got more contrast between all the instruments that are playing more fluidly and in the way that you traditionally think of as being kind of funky, offbeat and everything. It's much more impactful and powerful when you've got something which is just sharply timekeeping. You don't want it too heavy. If you've got like big, solid hits on each rhythm, then that kind of takes away from it. But if you've just got something like the little piano, just kind of marking out where the beat is, but in a very, very short, sharp way that doesn't get in the way of anything, that actually makes everything else feel funkier by contrast. It's a technique that I'm going to use a rap reference here, but if you go back to like I think a lot of like 90s rap this was a common thing. I think Dr. Dre was one of the main people who kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not prioritized, proliferated this. You listen to a lot of his beats, and he would always go for that kind of California love style of piano playing. And so I always find it fun when I hear other artists do that. I mean, I know that's not the only place, but that's kind of one of the most famous places for using that. And Mrs. Green Apple do occasionally use that. In fact, in my last song, BFF, there was a little bit of that going on. And it's a cool thing to do. That sort of little sharp piano hop, it does mean that you can make the rest of the song sound funkier by comparison. A lot of the funkiest, like sort of bass lines and funkiest songs will often have a drum beat, which is actually a very straightforward kick, snare. The kick and the snare have become very straightforward. Because again, contrast helps. In this particular case, though, yeah, I would say this song was all about that sort of funky layering of sounds coming and going, very Mrs. Green Apple, sounds, sort of just doing quick little expressive runs and then disappearing, a range of different sounds appearing all over the stereo range. It was just a very enjoyable. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm looking at the album cover right now, and in a way, this song almost feels like a beautiful embodiment of the album cover, and it's just kind of like so much going on, and yet at the same time, it's quite subdued. It's not too aggressive, it's not too in your face, but it is just like there's a lot of stuff in there. And so, yeah, very colourful. So I must say, I really found this to be an enjoyable, noteworthy as an ending to an album, rather than noteworthy necessarily as a standout song. But I got to admit that this is one that, although I would not probably remember it as standout enough to come back to in its own right, certainly if you listen to an album and this is the last song, this is just a really good way to finish an album. I have that thing where often, just because of the amount of time there is in the day, you don't get to listen to albums a lot at home because you're usually doing something, working. But when I'm out walking, that's a great time to stick an album on. So I must admit, most of my album listening is actually done when I'm outside walking, and or jogging or shopping or whatever. And I do think it's one of the things that's often overlooked is when you get to the end of an album, it's always kind of sad. You've just been listening to it while you're walking along, enjoying it, and when it ends, it's kind of like, it's over. But when an album ends, really that aftertaste, that last taste you get really sticks with you. It's really, so you get some albums that just end suddenly, and it's kind of like, it feels a bit unceremonious. This one is weird because it's not like a big ending, but it feels like, you listen to that last note and just those last few notes and the way it finishes, it certainly leaves you with a good taste in your mouth. It's certainly sort of like you've been taken on this big journey and it brings you down and just like puts you down, and we're done. I like that. I think that's a nice way of doing it. So for me, enjoyable song. Really enjoyed it while it's on. Not one I would come back to necessarily in isolation, but definitely one of those ones where every time I put on the album and this song comes on, I'd be thinking, yeah, I remember this album ends on a really nice, positive, colourful, well layered, and interesting song, which doesn't outstay its welcome at like minus 2.5 minutes. There's nothing in those last few seconds now. That's wind down time. All right. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was really cool. Let's just double check that is the last song on the album, right? Wow, look at that. We finished it now. I got to be honest. This album was really cool. I don't usually do. I'd usually save it till later to do a full album review, but I will give my just brief thoughts on this. I would say that the album, for being their first album as a 3-piece. Obviously, there's a lot of things about the 5-piece that I can't deny I'm always going to personally like. However, I think that they did a really good job here keeping the feeling alive. It still felt thickly, instrumentally layered. Ironically, the only couple of songs that didn't necessarily feel like they had the Mrs. Green Apple signature quality of being thickly layered were right at the front of the album. So it's like almost putting them in a position which is going to potentially scare new long-term listeners coming in. It's like, I hope I really like the new album, and then it plays it, it's like, it sounds really different. Like that opening track, I really like that opening track, but it really sounds like it doesn't quite have the same vibe as a lot of the title track, ironically, as a lot of the previous Mrs. Green Apple stuff. Magic as well it got a lot of the things, but in a very different way, and it's actually not until later. Ironically, I mean, I'm Invincible. Invincible's a good idea. Que Sera Sera, these ones where you start to get a little bit more of the traditional Mrs. Green Apple vibe. So I like that it starts with a little bit of a shock to the system, but still very strong beginning to the album. I said before I'm not a big fan of Blizzard, to be honest, but I don't dislike it. It's just kind of one of those ones where it goes by and it's okay, that's fair enough. But otherwise, with all things considered, the beginning of the album's great. There's no real problem tracks on here. There's obviously ones that I prefer to others, but I would say as a general, this makes a very satisfying listen. It's got variety, it's got range, and it remains colourful throughout. So, strong album, and I do think most importantly, it seems to pick up from where Attitude left off in a genuinely heartfelt way that just kind of, I guess it shows how much involvement Omari had in that, his songwriting being the central thing means that this album doesn't actually feel that different from the last one. However, it doesn't change the fact that I still find it really cool that they've managed to maintain that. And that there hasn't become like a complacency in any of the instruments. We still got really good lines on guitar, bass, drums, vocals, keyboards, everything. So, great stuff. I really enjoyed this. As always, get in the comments, tell me what you think. And then we'll see what we pick up. I haven't decided what album to do next, actually. But we'll see what we think about doing next, or maybe I'll look at some of the other individual tracks. Not really sure. But until I do come back to you with something new and see where we continue next, until then, for now, ciao, ciao.